Hey everyone, and welcome to TurboDonkey Entertainment. I'm Travis, and today we're going to take a look at Amun Re. Amun Re is an ancient Egyptian-themed game in which players take the role of pharaohs and their dynasties, attempting to leave a lasting legacy along the Nile in both the Old and New Kingdoms. Players do so by bidding on provinces, controlling these regions, gathering resources, trying to win the favor of the gods, and building as many pyramids as possible. This is done in two sections of the game, the Old Kingdom and the New Kingdom, and the bidding phase takes place in both cases. So, as the Old Kingdom falls and time enters into the New Kingdom, players can take control of pyramids built by others in the previous round of the game. So why don't we take a look at what's inside, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. In Amun Re, players are competing over the various provinces along the Nile, each offering their own unique resources and benefits to the player. A game lasts for 2 ages, the Old and the New Kingdom. Each age has 3 rounds plus a scoring phase at the end, and each round consists of 4 phases. The first phase is the auctioning phase for these provinces. In a 3-player game, 3 of these will be shown. The number of provinces will always equal the number of players. Each player will take one of their workers and place it on a location of their choice. Each of these bidding spaces starts at 0, so it's possible for a player to gain one of these locations for free. However, a player may come in and outbid one of the players, willing to spend some of their gold on the location. In this example, the second player has chosen to play 3 gold on Memphis. The third player may decide to try to take Sawu. This player, the first player, cannot outbid this player on Memphis. They must bid elsewhere. So they could choose to bid on Sawu, knowing they'll have to spend money, or they could just take Thebes for 0 if they really wanted to. Once the auctioning has been completed, players will leave their player pieces on the board to remind themselves of who owns what, and each of these cards will be kept as another reminder. Immediate bonuses are always gained as soon as an auction phase is completed. For example, in Memphis, the immediate bonus is 2 stone, which are placed in the province. At Thebes, the immediate bonus is for the white player to draw 2 cards. Now these cards normally would be kept secret, so they would take them and put them in their hands. The player that auctioned on Sawu doesn't get an immediate bonus, because there's nothing there. They will, however, get the opportunity to purchase cards, farmers, and gain some gold, depending on the outcome of a later phase. In the purchasing and construction phase, players will follow a chart at the top of the board. This chart tells them they may purchase favor cards, farmers, and stone. Players are limited to how much they're allowed to purchase based on how much gold they have. Buying 1 of an item costs 1, 2 of an item costs 3, 3 of an item costs 6, all the way up to 7 of an item costing 28 gold. So the more that's purchased, the more expensive it gets. Players are also limited in terms of favor cards. For example, the player that controls Memphis can only purchase up to 3 favor cards, while the players at Thebes and Sawu may only purchase 2. If players control multiple locations on the board, they may always purchase the number of favor cards shown on the highest value location. For example, if the player that controlled Thebes purchased Budo on a later round, which doesn't offer any favor cards, they can still purchase 2. Purchasing farmers works in the same way. Farmers are taken from a central location and would be placed in the areas along the Nile. Additional farmers may be purchased and just placed in the territory. However, they don't offer any benefit at this point in the game. Stones may also be purchased. A single stone for Memphis would make 3, which is immediately replaced with a small pyramid. If a pyramid is already here, let's say a pyramid and a stone, and the player purchases 2 more stones, instead of adding another small pyramid, the player would remove all of it to build a large pyramid to keep track of how many points that area would be worth. Multiple pyramids can be built in a single location. We'll return this back to where it was. At the end of the purchase and construction phase, when all players have purchased whatever they want, players will then make their offerings to Amun Re. The offerings phase has several tiles that could potentially be chosen. All players will secretly make their offerings and reveal them at the same time. The player who offers the most to Amun Re will get the first player token and become the new first player for the next round of the game. Players who offer the most also get 3 rewards of their choice. Players who offer the second most get 2 rewards, while the player in third place only gets 1 reward. This can be any combination of stone, farmers, or favor cards. After this has all been added up, players will look at these tiles to determine the total amount to determine which of these is chosen. For example, if together the players offered a total of 9 to Amun Re, this tile would be chosen and placed here. Instead of making an offering, players can instead play a secret thieves card in which 3 gold is removed from the total offering value, but the player may take 3 gold from the general supply to add to theirs. Players who play this card may not take a reward during their turn, even if they're the second or third player. After the offerings have been added up, players then go into the harvest phase. Farmers are worth, on the green spaces, are worth the number of gold shown here. So, for example, the Memphis player would gain 2 gold for each of his 3 farmers, totaling 6. Caravans will want to see if the camel is pictured. If a player such as Sawu has a caravan, they gain the number of gold shown in this space. So this player would gain 7 gold. Gold mines, which there's not one in play right now, but here's one for an example, would give just the total value no matter if a camel or not is showing. They always get this each and every turn. After 3 rounds have been played, each player will control 3 separate provinces and will have a variety of resources played out. At this point, the age is over and it's time to score victory points. The first way to score victory points is through temples. Players will look on the board for temples shown on tiles they control. The number of points each temple is worth is based on the gold value of the current offering tile. So in this example, both the white player and the black player would earn 2 points. Each player also scores 1 victory point for every pyramid they control. For example, the white player would have 1, 2, 3 points. The black player, however, would have 2 points for a large pyramid and a 3rd point here for the small. The red player also would have 2 points for this and 1 point for this. Stones, no matter how many are in a location, are unable to be scored. Players also look for the province with the least number of pyramids. They gain 3 victory points per pyramid in that location. In this example, The white player has 1 pyramid in each location, so he would get 3 points for one of those pyramids. The black player and the red player both have provinces without pyramids, so they don't score points. Players then will look at each side of the Nile to determine which player has the most points on that side. If, for example, the red player has 3 pyramids on this side, so he gains 5 points. On this side of the Nile, the black player and the white player both have 2 pyramids, the black player having a double large pyramid. For this, players will look to see who has the most stones. In this example, the black player has 2, while the white player has 1. So this player will gain 5 points. In the event of another tie, if there were 2 stones at this location, both players would receive 5 points. Players will also look at favor cards to determine if they score anything in that point, which I'll go over in just a moment. At this point, all farmers and player tokens are removed from the board, but pyramids and stones are left in place. The game will restart with all of the provinces being reshuffled, and there will be a second age to the game. Players will once again bid on these locations, but now they're bidding also on the pyramids that are still located there. These can be valuable points later in the game. There are various favor cards that can be used in the game. Red favor cards can be played during the auction phase to do things like blocking a player from bidding directly in front of you, or allowing you to bid on a location that you've just been outbid at. Players can also get construction bonuses, in which case only 2 stones would be required to build a small pyramid. During the harvest phase, players may play cards like this, which give immediate bonuses of 8 points, or an additional gold per farmer. For example, from our earlier example, if the value of each farmer is 2 from the current token, this card would increase for that player the value to 3. Players may also, during the offering phase, play this card, which increases or decreases the total value of the offering by 3, depending on the player's choice at the time the card is revealed. This would allow players who still want to make some sort of offering, but want to keep the range down low enough to use these caravans, or players that play it because they don't want to spend their gold but have that card in their hand and want to be able to bump the offering up a little bit. Finally, players may earn additional points through the end of age bonus cards. For example, a player with 9 farmers would gain 3 additional victory points. In this case, a player with all of their provinces on one side of the Nile or the other would gain an additional 3 points. There is also a card to allow players to build either in the upper or lower Nile, indicated by these two images. At the end of the second age, the player with the most points wins. So what are my thoughts? When I first saw Amun Re, it didn't really draw me in, at least in terms of how the game played. I'm not typically drawn towards economic games, so that was kind of pushed me away a little bit initially. Also, I typically don't like to buy games that only have 3 or more players. I like to have games that have 2 players because I'm typically playing 2-player games. However, I still wanted to give this one a shot, so taking a look at the theme especially, which I really like the ancient Egyptian theme. I like the idea of being a pharaoh and competing with other rulers in the region to leave my legacy along the Nile and control regions and gather these resources while trying to get the favor of the gods at the same time, but and having all of those different choices depending on the areas that I control on the board. After playing the game, which I've only played with 3 players, so I do not know how this plays with 4 or 5, I really enjoyed it. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed the game, at how much each decision felt like it was meaningful. Now, I will admit, a couple of the people I have played with have said that the earlier decisions in the game don't seem to mean as much. And I kind of agree with them on that. The initial phase of bidding, some of the early actions really are kind of programmed, where it's get as many resources as possible with what you have available. I think that's part of the nature of a bidding game, part of the nature of really many board games where you start with limited resources and need to gather, that it's really just get as much as you can as early as you can. However, by the time of the second phase, entering the New Kingdom, that changes completely. There's more resources in your hand, there's more resources already on the board, and you already know what regions are going to be available because everyone has already played all of these regions. So it's a little more important at that phase of the game, which I really enjoyed the fact that the complexity of the game ramps up as it goes, that the importance of these decisions becomes more obvious, as well as developing a strategy is a little easier towards the second half of the game, where at the beginning it's kind of just a power grab. Surprisingly, I also like the fact that there is no combat in this game. I think in a larger game that an ancient Egyptian, realistic pharaohs building their dynasties, that having combat could work, but I like the fact that it's not in this. The only combat, if you could call it that, is during the bidding phase, when there's cards that can be played that can jump ahead of other people or force them to not bid on certain areas, which I really did enjoy. I liked the fact that the player interaction wasn't that direct. There wasn't a lot of, there was no take that. There was, other than I'm going to bid on this and force you to bid elsewhere, which could get a little heated at times if someone really wanted something. But there was still that option of there's other places to go to. There was never a point of being overwhelmed. Now I say all of this as being the player in the first game of this that I played, getting completely destroyed by two other people playing their first time. Yet I still enjoyed it. This was a lot of games that I've played that have the score track. Typically, everyone on their first game will do similarly well, but there was a point in the New Kingdom where I realized there's nothing I can do to really pull ahead. And that wasn't because of randomness. That wasn't because of the other players sneaking me out of things. I knew that it was because of my poor decisions that I had made at a certain point in the game. And I could look at those and realize I've done something wrong here, and I know how I could fix it in a future game. So that is definitely a plus for me in this. Amun Re, I believe it's going to stay in my collection for a while. One reason, I don't have another game like it. I don't really have any games that are very similar to this, with the auctioning and the area control all mixed together. And I want to play it a few more times. I want to try it at 5 players. I want to see how it is. I definitely think that this game is worthy of anyone's shelf. If you enjoy the bluffing, if you enjoy the auctioning, and like to have that non-combat player interaction, if you enjoy kind of no take that situations, or no serious ones at least, and I think it's an excellent game to add to a collection. So my recommendation is, if this looks like one that you would enjoy, go try it out. Find someone that has a copy and play it. Look, a board game cafe or a local game store, but definitely give it a shot and let me know what you think down in the comments. Thanks for watching.